You what up, everybody? I'm Chris. All right, let's look at some list formatting stuff. All right, woo, let's head over here. All right, so of course we head over to our classic Warrior Horses site, where the Warrior Horses are very, very concerned about world dominance, as we all know, and as a part of that, they are trying to compete with different intelligent species on the planet. Right, we've seen run-ins with turkeys, rabbits, and so on. But the real threat, of course, is humans. And so, of course, they're tracking their population versus human population in our lovely list called World Dominance. All right, so here we go. And these are actual numbers. Fun, fun, fun. We have our, the number of horses, and we have the number of humans, right? And then we've got some calculated columns that are showing us the horse population comparison to the world summary, where there's about 60 million horses out there, and the human population, there's 8 billion. So, the warrior horses have some work to do. Right, so they're taking a look here, but one of the things they're trying to determine with this is how many horses per 100 people, right? It doesn't really make sense as a percentage exactly, right? So doing it like this, right, is saying, hey, in Mongolia, we are doing a fantastic job, right? We've got 127, 128, what do you want to call it, horses per person there. Or not per person, per 100 people, right? So that's like a whole horse and like a leg or something like that. Every person is entitled to. I don't understand Mongolian law. Don't worry about it. All right. That's important, right? So they've got all these plans, but this is a pretty boring list. I mean, it's cool that we can, sort stuff. We got some views we can create. We have little summaries and all that, but we want some visualizations. What? All right, well, let's do it. All right, so in order to do that, I'm going to use a setup I've shown a couple times. I will show links at the end to them, some of the tooling. I'm just going to go quickly through them. We've done some demos specifically on those, of course. I'm referring to a couple of extensions, one for the browser, which is SP Formatter, which could be put in the in Edge or Chrome, either one. Right, that's this guy, SP Formatter. There's also a version that's over here in VS Code. Let's get rid of that guy. And then I'm using another extension called JSONify, which will provide syntax highlighting for list formatting as we write expressions. All right, so all of that, very exciting. Now let's come over here and let's start seeing how that works. So the way these work, these tools, is if I go to format this column, format this column, we'll go to advanced mode, and we can see I have my enhanced formatter is enabled, which allows it to do things like auto preview, some other stuff. Let's get our column where we can see it. There's our column we're targeting. And let's come over here and let's just turn on SP Formatter, start a new session. So now we start the new session. A lot of times we have to bonk, bonk. There it is, right? So connected to the playground.json. So you can see that whatever I'm working on over here is showing over here, just to prove that is live. Well, right? So again, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but this is the setup I use for like 90% of all the formats I make. All right. Wow, we indeed. So let's take a look at a format that we can use to express horses per 100 people in a little more understandable way. So we're going to start with a lovely format here where we're just going to add a box, right? So let's add some children, because I happen to know what we're coming towards, right? So children just means we want other elements inside there. So let's add another div inside, right? And this div, we're just going to give it some attributes. So let's add a class, that way we can make it look the way we want. All right, so let's add class, and we'll just add MS BG color theme primary, so we get this nice brown color. Of course, we're not actually drawing anything yet, so let's draw some things. Let's put a width here. We're just going to put a width of 10 pixels so we can see it. All right, and let's put a height of 10 pixels as well. If we get rid of that, let's see. Oh, we got a bad format here. Oh, well, we need that guy. And then we need, of course, our other element down here. Or what have we done wrong with our format here? Got our styles. Aha! Here we go. Formatting be hard, my friends. All right, let's format that document. Boom. All right. So there we go. Now we did it. We have a dot. Wow, that's exciting. Well, it's not really a dot. Let's make it a dot, actually. So there you go. We'll give it a border radius. 50%. Let's take out a comment. Now it applies. There we go. Now we have a dot. Ooh, that's exciting. But let's take that further, right? Now I need 100 dots, right? So what do? I copy this and I just start pasting, right? I'm kidding. That's insane. A valid way to do it, but maintaining that is no fun. We don't want to do that. So we're going to use a thing we've shown before, which is an advanced technique. It's a for each property, right? So we're going to add a for each. And when we add those, it's going to automatically suggest that we put an iterator, right? So now we need an iterator name. We're just going to call it we'll call it dot iterator, because that's what these are, dots. And we're going to say, now normally we would put, say, a multi-person column, right, or a bunch of choices here. We would just put the name of the internal column, or we put at current field, right, if it's an array type field. That'd be cool. We're going to use a technique called using split, which will allow us to create one on the fly, right? 1, 2, 3, right? We do something like that, and we say split that on the comma, boom, right? And then we're going to say, oh, we got to spell for each correctly, though. That's kind of important. All right, and let's put a comma. All right, so look, now we have 3 dots. Ooh, that's exciting. I find this hard to read, so I'm going to show you a quick little trick, which is let's take out that. And if we take out this comma, we just say blank, it'll actually just split every character, right? So however many characters we have in here is however many dots we're going to get. Ooh. So now we can just say like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0, just to represent our 10th. Right now we have 10 dots. Wow, we did it. That's exciting, right? So let's take it a little further from there. So what if we want to make those look a little better, right? And of course we want, 90 more of these things. So I could, of course, add more dots here and then try and figure out wrapping and all sorts of stuff, but that's like so much more work. I'm not going to do that. So instead, we're going to nest this guy a little further. So the way we do that is we come up here, we've got our child here, child element. So let's just come up here like we're adding another element. So we're going to say elm type is, of course, div. Ignore all the Copilot suggestions. We don't care. Children, right? And then we're just going to say, there's our children. And we're going to do some cut and pasting for real this time. Cut that sucker. And we'll just paste it. And we're going to say, format this document to make it look pretty again. There we go. So now we didn't change anything, although you'll notice that suddenly our dots are now vertically expressed, which is not what we want. So let's fix that. So we're going to add our style element here. Go ahead and make that with a comma so it starts to apply. And then we're going to say things like display is flex. And we're going to say our flex direction is row. And then let's give it a gap of, say, 2 pixels. That sounds great. Okay. So by doing that, right, we're saying in a row, put these out in a row, and then we're going to say put a gap of 2 pixels between them. Ooh, look at that. We've got some dots. Well, let's go even further. Just to make this more obvious, I'm going to call this the column iterator now, right? Just to make what we're doing make more sense. And what if we were to take this guy and nest it by saying another for each? This is crazy. Crazy times. All right, so now we're going to say a row iterator, and we'll just do the exact same thing. And now, of course, we did it, but all our rows are actually all next to each other, so you can see where there's no gap between them. Well, we can fix that by once again nesting. Let's do another nesting. All right, so we're going to say elm type is div, and we're going to say our children. Ooh, children. Hello, children. All right, and we'll get rid of that guy. We don't need you. Bye. And we'll just go ahead and copy all of this, and we're going to stick it in there again. So by children, we're just saying draw this box inside this other box, is all we're really saying. All right, so format that document. So now we've got this. Ooh, now we're getting somewhere, right? So let's add some more styles here just to be consistent here. So let's say style, bom, 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 ba-dom, bom. These are sound effects. I don't need your special soundboard, David, right? And we'll say display is flex. And again, we're going to say flex direction is column this time. And we'll say another gap of 4 pixels, right? So, ooh, there we go. Now we've got 100 dots. Oh, that's exciting, right? And of course, we only really have these elements. So what's really happening here? So just so we understand, what we do when we add that for each, we are creating a template, right? So it's not creating just, a dot that it's redrawing. It's an actual template that will reevaluate for each item in the array. And because we're doing this twice, right, 10 times 10 is 100. So we got 100 lovely dots here, and we can start to do some exciting things with them. All right, so the first thing we're going to take a look at here is changing this around just a bit so that we can then figure out what I'm doing. Okay, so I want to show another thing we can do, right? So the scaling's fine. This is pretty big. It's not quite what I want. So let's take a look at how we could make scaling work, right? So this is where we're going to look at EM, right? So M units, right, which comes from old typesetting, right? And the idea is 1 M is 1 font size worth. So 2 M's is 2 times the font size. So by default, the font size is 14 pixels in the SharePoint list, right? So we can use that, or we can set our own, right? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to set a font size here. So we'll set a font size instead of 10 pixels. We're just for our fun, we're going to say 4 pixels, right? So then if I come down here to this width, instead of 10 pixels, I say 1 M, right? I'm going to say 1 M for this as well. And then we'll say, like, 0.25 M's for the gap, right? And we'll do the same for the other gap, right? 0.25 M's. So do you see how that started scaling, right? So that allows us to control the scale of everything we're drawing based on this value here. So I can go 6, right? Heck, I can go 60, right? But that's the idea. So now, because I'm doing all of my other values as these relative sizes using the M units, right? I can control everything from the root element, or whatever level of the hierarchy I want, right? I'm not actually doing the root element. We'll talk about why here in a moment, but that's pretty cool, right? So let's take it back down to 4 pixels because we just want 100 tiny little dots. Woo! And what you'll notice here is we can actually do things like padding, right? And the way this works is the font size for the element gets determined first, and then the font size for the element, and any children that don't override it because it's inherited, are then used to calculate all the other sizes using this M units. Wow, that's cool. All right, so now let's make this thing a little bit dynamic, right? Because right now it's just a bunch of dots, and that's, super exciting. But let's make it better. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change this class, and we're going to make it dynamic, right? So let's make an expression. We start expressions with our equal symbol, equals, and then we're going to say if, and we're going to say, this is where we're going to see a loop index. Now you'll see that I'm getting things like this IntelliSense. I'm getting, coloring of these things right as we go. And the reason that's happening, that's all that JSONify stuff. So if you add JSONify, that's going to make this a lot easier to write these because it's going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. You're going to know, oh, if I want to reference the iterator, I don't just write row iterator. I have to write it in single quotes, right? I don't write it in the field syntax, although I can write in the field syntax if I want the individual value. We'll go over that in a moment. Woo, woo, woo. All right, so let's just say how we calculate the dot we're in, right? We're going to get the row iterator. So that's the loop index. It's a zero-based index, right? So now if I say, actually, let's go back and let's not do that part yet. Let's make it more obvious what we're doing. So an if statement, right? If we say if it's true, then you're going to do the first one. All right, so MS, BG, color, theme, primary. All of these classes are listed on our list formatting site if you are interested. Let's see what we got there. Did you spell it right? Sure. Okay, so now we've said, hey, when it's true, make them theme primary. When it's false, make them this neutral gray. Ooh! So now we know those work. So now let's build in what that expression was going to be. So we're going to go back to what we were started to do, which is our row iterator. And we're going to say times 10, right, to figure out where the heck we are. And then we're going to say plus the loop index of the column iterator. Right, and that sort of works, but we need to add a +1 because it's zero-based, right? So now we have a +1, but we need to say less than or equal to, and we're going to say ceiling, just get rid of the decimal spots because we're not doing partial dots here. And I'm going to say at the current field. Ooh, look at that! So now we're saying whatever that value was, right? This one was over 100, so it's going to make all the dots this lovely brown for the horses, right? And so on. So now we start to see a much better visualization that makes it much more obvious. Hey, how are we doing in terms of our relative proportion? Ooh, that's cool. All right, so that's an expression we wrote. Wowee. And then we could go a little further, right, if we wanted. I'm just going to go ahead and skip to that just so we can see what we got. So I'm just going to grab this form. This is a sample that is available to you, which I will link to in the end. That is not how you cut and paste. Let's copy that, and I'm going to paste it back in here. Yeah, there we go. So all this did was I don't know why it's suggesting that extra crap. Okay, what we did here is we just took, we had 2 children now, right? So we have this one, which was the chart we built before, and now we've added this other one here, which is just putting out the value with some text underneath it. All right, so we can see it in its full action, and then it's centering it up here. But the main thing it's doing, though, is you'll notice that I'm setting even the font size to an M, right? So I'm saying whatever the font size of the very root element is, scale this based on this relative scale of that, then everything else will scale based on the scale from that. And I'm even doing the same thing down here where I'm scaling things up a little bit, right? So again, I'm able to take this and I could say things like 18, right? Or I could say 28, right? So the idea is by building it that way, we can scale the heck out of this. Wow, right? We could even take that off entirely, right? And have it scale based on the 14 pixels of the SharePoint list, right? Which we're not going to do for now, but that's cool, right? So if we save that, we can go even further if we want to, right? So what if we wanted to take this, and that's very, very cool, right? Let's actually take out the font size so I can, well, we'll leave the font size for now. Nah, we'll take out the font size, fun. I'm going to take it out so that it scales correctly, right? So now it's just scaled based on the SharePoint list font size. Okay. Now if I close that, which I did not save, so let's format this column and save that. Bonk, bonk. There we go. Save. Okay. Now we're getting rid of that. Okay. So now we come over here. I've got a lovely list here. Let's go a little further, right? So let's create a new view. Let's add a view. Well, first let's show you one other thing. I got all sorts of ideas of what I could show you here. All right. So just for fun here, let's grab this emoji one just to show you that it could be done with emojis instead if you really wanted to, right? There we go. Let's scroll that back over. Right, so we're just changing the text content based on that dynamic thing. All right, so if we wanted to do emojis or we want to do something else, or we wanted to do other colors or different shapes, all that's pretty easy to do. And again, it's still just using a relatively small format here. All right, so that's good, but let's not do that. All right, so now let's add another view. So let's add a view. Let's add a gallery view. We're going to call it courses per people. Yep, I may have tried it before. All right, so let's create that. And so now we've got this gallery view, and that's okay, because again, this is helpful in line, right, to see this, but that's not very legible comparatively. So let's come here and let's customize this view. So let's format our view, and we're not going to do a card designer, we don't care. All right, so we're just going to cut and paste this one and take a look at it. All right, so if I grab this gallery and we paste that here, all right, let's turn that off so we don't see anything, and look at the format over here. The idea here is we've just got sizes and so on, and we've got a column formatter reference. But what you'll notice is we suddenly have scaled this whole thing. Save and close. So everything is now scaled. And the way that got scaled is because we didn't set that font size at the root. It's going to override the scaling here in the column formatter reference. So when it grabs the column formatter reference from that column and sticks it in here, right now we just put a title, we put that there, we don't have to cut and paste all that again. It will now scale it as needed, right? So you could really use this font size scaling to pretty cool advantages in effect. All right, let's jump over to slides and wrap her up. Slides, where are you? There you are. Okay, so again, this is that JSONify tool. The main thing we're using it for is to do your horse script recognizing, right? So you can take your formats just like this. Oh, look how pretty they get. I'm only showing this because there are a few tokens that are unique to the Warrior Horse theme. Any theme could use them, but you switch the Warrior Horse theme, you'll have even more stuff inside there. Okay. All right, and then this other tool, which is awesome, I love it, it's straight up magic, is the SP Formatter. I use it all the time. Highly recommend it. You have 2 extensions, one for VS Code and one for the browser. All of these things are open source and free. All right, so let's quickly go over for each. The reason we put those as sub-elements is because you cannot add a for each to the root element. It's required to be within at least one sub-level down in a child, which makes sense in some ways. It's great. This is how you write what it is. Again, you can write a current field. You can reference some other field that is an array type. Or you can do rtrick, which is a split. I didn't show you, but if you put a space right there, it will break. So no spaces in your split. Very sad. All right. And then what it does is it creates this virtual field out of the iterator name, so you can reference it here. So if you have a value in there, in our case, we didn't care about the value. We only cared about the position. But if you want to reference the value, you can do that. If you want to reference the position like we did, you can use the loop index, which again is 0 base, so make sure you're accounting for that by adding 1 if you want to bring it up, if you wanted the actual numbers or so on. And then, of course, you just reference those inside the quotes with the name. So you don't use the field syntax for this. You just go with that. Wow-wee. And then column formatter reference. This is what we talked about. You're just going to put the name of the internal column. All right, so it's column formatter reference, and then whatever that column name you want, you can pull that in. Now, column formatter references work both in column and view format. So you can get crazy with your inception, but you cannot nest them, right? So column formatter reference can't contain a column format that also has a column formatter reference. Oh, sad. All right. So then the last one here is those relative sizes using those units. So this is a really, really cool and really powerful way to not have to go back through and edit each individual size. Making them all relative is pretty great for the scaling. That way, if you want to use your format in a view format as well, like we showed, or you want to do something like show it in a web part where it's just one item, all of that can work nicely without having to re-implement that everywhere, and you can just update that color or whatever you update in one spot. Okay. Note here is this hierarchy overrides and relative hierarchies. It's just a fancy way of saying if you put a font size somewhere, you can override what the inheritance is coming from. And if you specify that font size in IMS itself, it's a relative hierarchy, which is what we showed. Woo! All right. And finally, resources. Go get them. So this is a sample that I didn't actually publish because I didn't make the sample JSON, but I will be published very shortly after this. Be sure to check that out. It's got all 3 of the formats. It's got the emoji version. It's got the gallery and so on. And then these are your tools, including the lovely horses. All right. And that's it for me. Wow!